It didn't end with a fight. That's what made it harder. There was no loud goodbye, no dramatic words, no door slammed in anger. Just a quiet moment where two people realized they were slowly breaking each other. Sometimes people think the most painful goodbyes are the loud ones, the ones filled with accusations and tears. But that's not always true. Sometimes the most painful goodbyes are the quiet ones, the ones where you sit across from someone you once loved deeply, and both of you know it's over, because caring was no longer enough. I remember that evening clearly. It wasn't special, just an ordinary day trying too hard to feel normal. The sky was gray, the kind of gray that doesn't rain but doesn't let the sun through either. We sat together in silence, two people who once had so much to say, now searching for words that refused to come. I looked at them, really looked, and for the first time, I didn't see the person I fell in love with. I saw someone tired, someone distant, someone quietly hurting. Maybe they saw the same in me. There's a moment in every ending when the truth becomes impossible to ignore. It doesn't arrive suddenly. It builds slowly, through small disappointments, unspoken words, and nights where you feel alone, even when someone is right beside you. We had reached that moment. No one said it first, but it hung in the air between us, heavy, unavoidable. Sometimes love doesn't die. It just changes shape until it no longer feels like home. And when love stops feeling like home, staying becomes a different kind of pain. People think leaving is the hardest part. They imagine the goodbye as the moment that breaks you. But what they don't understand is this. The real breaking happens long before the goodbye. It happens in the nights you cry silently, in the moments you feel unseen, in the quiet realization that you are slowly losing yourself trying to keep someone else. I didn't want to leave because I remembered when it once was. Memories can be dangerous like that. They convince you to stay in places that are no longer meant for you. I remembered laughter, late-night conversations, the way we once looked at each other like the world made sense. And for a long time, those memories kept me there, even when reality no longer matched them. That's the strange thing about love. It teaches you to hold on, to fight, to stay. But it doesn't always teach you when to let go. And sometimes, letting go is the very thing that saves you. I didn't realize it at first. At first, the idea of leaving felt like failure, like giving up, like admitting that everything we built was falling apart. I kept telling myself, maybe things will get better. Maybe this is just a phase. Maybe if I try harder. But trying harder was slowly destroying me. I was losing sleep, losing peace, losing the version of myself that once felt alive. You don't notice it immediately when you start disappearing. It happens slowly. You laugh less. You speak less. You start overthinking everything you say. You begin shrinking yourself to avoid conflict, to avoid distance, to avoid losing them. Until one day you realize you have already lost yourself. And that realization is terrifying, because how do you explain to someone that staying with them is costing you your own happiness? How do you tell someone you love that loving them is starting to hurt you? That evening, we didn't say much, but silence has a language of its own. And in that silence, I understood something that took me months to accept. Some goodbyes are not acts of weakness. Some goodbyes are acts of survival. Not every person who leaves is running away. Sometimes they are trying to save what's left of their own heart. I wish someone had told me earlier that it's okay to outgrow places that once felt like home. I wish someone had told me that love is not supposed to feel like constant exhaustion. I wish someone had told me that choosing yourself is not selfish, but life has a way of teaching you these lessons slowly, through experiences you never asked for. That evening ended quietly. No dramatic final words, no promises to stay friends, no attempt to pretend everything was fine. Just two people sitting there knowing that the chapter was closing. And sometimes, when a chapter closes, it doesn't feel like relief. It feels like loss. Deep, heavy loss. The kind that follows you home, sits beside you in your room, keeps you awake at night, replaying every memory. I walked away slowly because I knew I had to. Every step felt heavy, like leaving behind a part of myself. And in many ways, I was. Because when you love someone deeply, they become a part of your daily life, your thoughts, your routines, your future plans. Walking away from them feels like walking away from a version of your own life. That night, I didn't feel strong. I didn't feel brave. I didn't feel relieved. I felt empty. There's a strange silence that comes after a meaningful goodbye. Your phone stops lighting up. Your day feels longer. Your room feels quieter. You keep reaching for something that is no longer there. And for a while, you question everything. Did I do the right thing? Could I have tried harder? Was leaving a mistake? These questions don't come once. They come again and again, especially in the middle of the night when everything feels heavier. But here's what I slowly began to understand. Just because something hurts doesn't mean it was the wrong decision. Some decisions hurt because they are necessary. Healing rarely feels comfortable. Growth rarely feels easy. And some goodbyes feel like breaking before they feel like freedom. I didn't feel saved at first. I felt lost. But sometimes you have to get lost before you find yourself again. Because not every goodbye destroys you. Some goodbyes quietly save your life. And I didn't realize it yet, but that was the kind of goodbye I had just lived through. The first few days felt unreal. You wake up expecting a message, a name on your screen, a small reminder that someone is still there, but the phone stays silent. And that silence feels louder than any argument ever did. It's strange how absence works. When someone is part of your everyday life, you don't notice how deeply they exist in your routine, until one day, they're gone. Their good morning texts, their random questions, their presence in the small details of your day. Everything suddenly stops, and the world keeps moving as if nothing changed. But inside you, everything has. I remember sitting alone one night, staring at the ceiling while the room felt heavier than usual. There was no one to tell about my day, no one to share random thoughts with, no one waiting for me on the other side of the screen, just silence. And in that silence, memories started visiting. The good ones first. Laughter in small cafes, long walks with no destination, moments that once felt permanent. Memories have a way of softening reality. They show you only what your heart wants to keep. For a moment, I almost forgot why the goodbye happened. That's the dangerous part of loneliness. It convinces you to romanticize what once hurt you. You start remembering smiles and slowly forget the nights you cried. You replay the warmth and ignore the distance that grew over time. And suddenly, going back starts to feel tempting. I won't lie, there were nights when I almost reached out. My fingers hovered over the screen, scrolling through old conversations, reading messages that once meant everything. It would have been easy to send a simple text, "Hey, I miss you. Can we talk?" Sometimes healing and going back are only one message apart, and in weak moments, going back feels safer than moving forward alone. But every time I almost typed something, I paused. Not out of pride, not out of anger, out of a quiet realization that some doors should remain closed, even when you miss what was behind them. Missing someone doesn't always mean they belong in your life. That was a lesson I learned slowly, painfully. There's a difference between love and peace, and sometimes you have to choose one. I began noticing small changes in myself. At first, they were barely visible, almost unimportant. I started sleeping a little better. My thoughts felt less chaotic. The constant tension in my chest began to loosen. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was relief, a quiet, unfamiliar relief I hadn't felt in a long time. For months, I had been carrying emotional weight without realizing how heavy it became. Trying to keep someone close while slowly losing connection is exhausting. You keep hoping things will return to how they once were. You keep investing energy into something that no longer grows. And without noticing, you drain yourself. When the goodbye finally happened, the pain was sharp. But beneath that pain, there was space. Space to breathe, space to think, space to exist without constant emotional confusion. I didn't recognize it at first. I was too focused on what I lost. But slowly, I began to see what I had gained. Peace doesn't arrive loudly. It enters quietly. One calm morning, one restful night, one moment where your mind finally feels still. You don't celebrate it. You just notice that you're no longer surviving each day. You're living it. I started rediscovering small parts of myself, parts that had been hidden while I was busy holding everything together. Music sounded different. Walks felt calmer. Even silence felt less threatening. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't trying to fix anything. I wasn't trying to prove my worth. I wasn't trying to keep someone from leaving. I was simply existing. And that simple existence felt healing. People often believe that losing someone means losing happiness, but sometimes losing the wrong connection makes space for the right relationship with yourself. I began understanding something important. Staying in a place where you constantly feel anxious slowly damages your spirit. You start questioning your value, your words, your emotions. You begin to wonder if you are too much or not enough. And when you live in that state long enough, it becomes normal. You forget what emotional safety feels like. Walking away didn't immediately heal me. It didn't magically erase the attachment. There were still moments of sadness, moments of doubt, moments when memories returned without warning. But those moments started coming less often, and each time they passed, I felt a little stronger. Not the loud kind of strength people post about online, a quiet strength, the kind that grows when you choose peace, even when your heart feels heavy. Weeks passed, then months. One evening, while sitting by the window watching the city lights flicker, I noticed something unexpected. I felt calm. Not distracted, not pretending, genuinely calm. There was no constant overthinking, no emotional pressure, no silent tension in my chest, just stillness. And in that stillness, a thought appeared gently. Maybe that goodbye didn't destroy me. Maybe it protected me. That realization didn't arrive dramatically. It settled slowly, like soft rain on a quiet night. Some endings don't exist to break you. They exist to remove you from places that were slowly breaking you already. I started seeing the past with clearer eyes. The relationship wasn't entirely bad. There were beautiful moments, real care, real connection. But there was also distance, misunderstanding, emotional exhaustion. Two truths can exist at once. You can love someone deeply and still accept that staying together is not healthy. Understanding that changed everything. I stopped viewing the goodbye as a failure. I started seeing it as a turning point, a moment where I finally listened to the quiet voice inside me that had been asking for peace for a long time. And slowly, very slowly, gratitude began to replace regret. Not for the pain, never for the pain, but for the lesson. Some goodbyes don't end your story, they redirect it. And sometimes that new direction leads you back to yourself. I didn't know it yet, but the life waiting ahead would feel lighter, softer, more honest. And one day, I would look back at that quiet evening, the one that felt like an ending, and understand it was actually the moment my life started healing. There's a strange moment that comes after loss, a moment when the world looks the same, but you don't. The streets are still busy, people still laugh in cafes, cars still pass under the same streetlights. Everything continues. Yet inside you, something has shifted, something quiet, something permanent. In the beginning, I measured time by absence. How many days since we last spoke? How many nights since the goodbye? How many times I almost went back? It's strange how the mind counts pain, as if tracking it makes it easier to carry. But pain doesn't fade through counting, it fades through understanding. And understanding arrives slowly, never all at once. One morning, I woke up without that familiar heaviness in my chest. It didn't disappear completely, it simply felt lighter. For a moment, I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what had changed. Then I realized something. I hadn't thought about them the entire morning. Not out of effort, not out of distraction. It just didn't happen. The realization felt strange, almost disloyal. How could someone who once meant everything become a quieter part of my mind? But that's how healing works. It doesn't erase memories. It gently changes their volume. They move from the center of your thoughts to a softer corner of your mind, still present, just no longer controlling everything. I started noticing life again, not in big, dramatic ways, in small, quiet details. The warmth of sunlight through the window, the comfort of a peaceful evening, the sound of my own thoughts no longer fighting each other. For a long time, I lived in emotional noise, uncertainty, overthinking, the constant effort to hold something together that was already falling apart. When that noise disappeared, the silence felt unfamiliar, but it also felt safe. I began spending more time alone, not the lonely kind of alone, the peaceful kind, the kind where you sit with yourself and don't feel the need to escape your own thoughts. That was new for me. Before the goodbye, being alone often felt heavy, like something was missing. Now it felt different. It felt like space. Space to breathe, space to reflect, space to understand who I was without constant emotional pressure. There's a version of yourself that only appears when you're no longer trying to keep someone else. I started meeting that version slowly. At first, it was subtle, a calmer reaction to small problems, a quieter mind before sleep, a sense of stability I hadn't felt in months. Then it became clearer. I was no longer anxious all the time, no longer waiting for someone else's mood to determine mine. My happiness stopped depending on someone else's attention. That change didn't feel dramatic, it felt natural, like returning to a place I once knew but somehow forgot. One evening, I sat alone in a small cafe, soft music playing in the background, people talking quietly around me. I watched them for a while, couples laughing, friends sharing stories, strangers passing by without noticing each other. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel a sharp ache in my chest. I felt present, comfortable in my own company. That moment surprised me. For so long, I believed happiness required someone else, someone to share everything with, someone to fill the silence. But sitting there, holding a warm cup in my hands, I understood something gently. Peace doesn't always arrive with another person. Sometimes it arrives when the wrong presence leaves. I wasn't angry anymore, not at them, not at myself, just understanding. We tried, we cared, but some connections aren't meant to last forever, and forcing them to stay only creates deeper wounds. Accepting that truth felt like setting something down after carrying it for too long. There's freedom in acceptance, a quiet kind. You stop replaying old conversations, stop imagining different outcomes, stop asking endless what-if questions. You begin living in what is, and what was slowly loses its grip on your heart. That doesn't mean memories disappear. They remain, softened by time, less painful, more distant. Sometimes they visit unexpectedly, a song, a place, a random moment that reminds you. But instead of breaking you, they simply pass through, like waves touching the shore without pulling you under. One night, while organizing old photos on my phone, I found pictures of us, smiling, laughing, moments frozen in time. I paused for a while, looking at those images. There was no sharp pain, no overwhelming sadness, just a quiet acknowledgement of something that once existed, something real, something meaningful, something that had its time, and then its ending. I didn't delete the photos. I didn't hold on to them tightly either. I simply let them be, part of my past, not part of my present. That distinction felt important. We often try to erase what hurts us, delete memories, avoid reminders, pretend certain chapters never happened. But healing doesn't always mean erasing. Sometimes it means remembering without breaking, understanding without reopening wounds, allowing the past to exist without letting it control your present. That night, I closed my phone and sat quietly for a while. There was a sense of completion, not a dramatic ending, just a gentle understanding that the chapter had fully closed. And in that quiet moment, another realization appeared. If that goodbye never happened, I would still be stuck in the same emotional cycle, still overthinking, still trying to fix what couldn't be fixed, still slowly losing myself while trying to keep someone else. The thought felt heavy, but honest. Some goodbyes don't just remove pain, they prevent future pain you cannot yet see. They redirect your life away from paths that would have drained you, away from situations where you slowly disappear. That realization changed how I saw everything. The goodbye wasn't the end of my happiness, it was the beginning of my return to myself. And sometimes returning to yourself is the most important journey you will ever take. I started feeling stronger, not in a loud, visible way, in a quiet, steady way. The kind of strength that doesn't need validation, the kind that grows in silence. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. Not to them, not to anyone. I just needed to live honestly, peacefully. And slowly, life began to feel lighter, as if something heavy had finally been set down. I didn't know what the future would bring, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of it. Sometimes, when something leaves your life, it creates space for something better. Not immediately, not obviously, but eventually. And as I sat there in the quiet of my own thoughts, I understood something with complete clarity. That goodbye, the one I once feared, the one that broke me for a while, was quietly rebuilding me in ways I never expected. Time didn't heal everything at once. It never does. Healing is quieter than people expect. It doesn't arrive like a sudden wave of happiness. It arrives like small moments of clarity that slowly change how you see your own life. Months passed. Life settled into a softer rhythm. Mornings felt calmer. Nights felt less heavy. I stopped checking my phone for messages that would never come, stopped replaying old conversations in my head, stopped wondering what they were doing or who they were with. Not with effort, just naturally. There's a point in healing where your mind finally gets tired of revisiting what's gone and instead starts focusing on what's here. I began noticing myself again, Not the version of me that was constantly worried, not the version trying to hold everything together. A quieter, more honest version, the kind that doesn't force smiles, the kind that doesn't beg to be understood, the kind that values peace more than temporary closeness. For a long time, I believed love meant endurance, staying, fighting, holding on no matter how difficult things became. But life has a way of teaching you that endurance without peace slowly becomes suffering. And suffering isn't proof of love. It's often proof that something is no longer right. One afternoon, I found myself walking through a familiar street, the same street where we once walked together. For a second, a memory tried to surface. The laughter, the conversations, the version of us that existed there once. But something felt different this time. The memory didn't pull me back. It simply passed through. I kept walking. And in that simple moment, I realized how far I had come. There was a time when passing that street would have tightened my chest, would have filled my mind with what ifs. Now it was just a street, a place that held a memory, nothing more. That's when I understood something important. Healing isn't about forgetting, it's about remembering without returning. You don't erase the past, you simply stop living inside it. I started making new routines, small ones, morning walks, quiet evenings with music, moments of reflection without heaviness. These routines felt simple, but they were rebuilding something inside me, stability. When your emotional world has been unstable for too long, peace feels unfamiliar at first, almost boring. You get used to emotional highs and lows, used to uncertainty, used to waiting for things to either improve or collapse. Peace doesn't come with drama, it comes with consistency, and consistency slowly rebuilds your sense of self. One night, while sitting by the window, watching distant lights flicker across buildings, I asked myself a quiet question. If that goodbye never happened, where would I be right now? The answer came gently. Still anxious, still overthinking, still trying to make something work that was slowly draining me, still ignoring the quiet voice inside that was asking for peace. That realization didn't make me sad, it made me grateful. Not for the pain, never for the pain, but for the courage that eventually grew within it. Leaving wasn't easy. Staying would have been easier in the moment. Familiar pain often feels safer than unfamiliar freedom, but familiar pain keeps you trapped. Freedom feels uncertain at first, lonely at times, quiet in ways you're not used to. Yet within that quiet, you rediscover your strength. I began trusting myself again, trusting my decisions, my instincts, my emotional boundaries. When you stay in a place that constantly hurts you, you start doubting your own judgment. You wonder if you're overreacting, if you're asking for too much, if you should just tolerate more. Walking away changed that. It reminded me that my feelings were valid, my peace mattered, my well-being deserved protection. These realizations didn't arrive at all at once. They formed slowly, layer by layer, like a wound closing over time. There was a day when everything became clear. It wasn't dramatic, no big event, no sudden realization, just a quiet morning. Sunlight entering the room softly, a calm mind, a steady heartbeat, and a simple understanding. I survived something that once felt impossible to survive. That thought stayed with me. For a long time, I believed losing them would destroy me completely, that I wouldn't know how to exist without that connection. But there I was, breathing calmly, living steadily, feeling whole again, stronger in a quieter way. Sometimes we underestimate ourselves, our ability to rebuild, our ability to adapt, our ability to heal from things we once thought would break us forever. The goodbye I once feared had become a turning point, not the kind you celebrate loudly, the kind you understand quietly. It removed me from an emotional cycle that was slowly exhausting me. It forced me to face myself, to grow, to rebuild from within.
And most importantly, it showed me that choosing peace is never the wrong decision, even when it hurts at first, even when it feels lonely, even when it takes time to understand why it was necessary. Some goodbyes don't just end relationships, they end patterns, patterns of self-neglect, patterns of emotional dependence, patterns of accepting less than what your heart truly needs. When those patterns end, a new version of you begins to appear, a calmer version, a wiser version, a stronger version. I wasn't the same person anymore, and for the first time, that felt like progress. There's a quiet confidence that comes after you survive something difficult. You stop fearing endings as much, stop clinging to things that don't feel right. You begin trusting that even if something ends, you will be okay, more than okay. You will grow. And sometimes growth only begins when something leaves your life. As I sat there that morning, feeling a calm I hadn't known before, one final thought settled gently in my mind. That goodbye, the one that once felt like loss, was actually protection in disguise. It removed me from a life that was slowly draining me. It gave me back the peace I didn't realize I had lost, and it led me back to myself. Some goodbyes don't destroy you. They quietly save your life.
There is a moment in every healing journey when you stop asking why it happened and start understanding what it taught you. That moment doesn't arrive with noise. It arrives quietly, almost gently. One day, you simply sit with yourself and realize you are no longer the same person who once cried over what you lost. You've changed, not in obvious ways that others notice, but in deeper ways that only you can feel. Your thoughts are calmer. Your heart reacts differently. Your soul no longer chases what once hurt it. I reached that moment slowly. It wasn't a sudden transformation. There was no dramatic turning point, just small realizations that began connecting over time. I noticed I was no longer afraid of being alone, no longer afraid of silence, no longer afraid of starting over. And that realization felt powerful in a quiet way. There was a time when loneliness felt unbearable, when the idea of losing someone felt like losing stability itself. But now, being alone didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like space, peaceful, open space where I could finally exist without pressure. That's when I understood something deeply. Sometimes we hold on to people not out of love, but out of fear. Fear of starting again, fear of feeling alone, fear of not finding something better. Fear can keep you in places that slowly break you. It convinces you that staying in pain is safer than stepping into the unknown. For a long time, that fear kept me where I was. It whispered things like, what if you never find this connection again? What if you regret leaving? What if this is the best you'll ever have? Fear has a quiet voice, but it can control your entire life if you listen to it for too long. Walking away forced me to face that fear directly, and what I discovered surprised me. The unknown wasn't as terrifying as staying somewhere that slowly drained me. Starting over wasn't as painful as slowly losing myself. Loneliness wasn't as heavy as constantly feeling misunderstood. Sometimes the things we fear most are actually the things that free us. I began rebuilding my life in ways that felt honest, not rushed, not forced, just steady. I spent more time understanding myself, what I needed, what I valued, what I would never accept again. Pain has a strange way of clarifying your boundaries. After experiencing emotional exhaustion, you stop tolerating what once felt normal. You begin protecting your peace, your energy, your heart, not with walls, but with awareness. I became more selective about what I allowed into my life. Not everyone deserves access to your emotional world. Not everyone deserves the depth of your care. And that realization didn't make me cold. It made me wise. There's a difference. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into a quiet new chapter. Life felt softer now, more stable, more aligned with who I truly was.
One evening, while watching the sky fade into night, I thought about everything that had happened: the love, the confusion, the slow drifting apart, the quiet goodbye. For a moment, I felt a gentle wave of gratitude, not for the ending itself, but for the growth that followed. If that goodbye never happened, I might still be stuck in the same emotional cycle, still hoping for change, still waiting for clarity, still ignoring my own needs. Instead, I was here, calm, grounded, at peace with my own company. Sometimes life removes people from your path not to punish you, but to protect you. Not every departure is a loss. Some are redirections. Redirections toward growth, toward self-respect, toward a life that feels lighter. I realized that letting go didn't erase the love that once existed. It simply made space for a healthier future, a future where I no longer had to shrink myself to keep someone close, a future where my peace was no longer negotiable. We often think strong people are those who hold on no matter what, but real strength sometimes looks different. Sometimes it looks like walking away quietly, choosing peace over familiarity, choosing growth over comfort, choosing yourself even when it hurts. That kind of strength doesn't need applause. It exists within you, steady and silent. If there's one lesson this journey gave me, it's this: some goodbyes arrive to remove what no longer nurtures you. They clear space for the version of you that has been waiting to breathe freely. At first, they feel like endings, like something precious is being taken away. But with time, you begin to see them differently, as protection, as redirection, as quiet acts of self-preservation. I no longer see that goodbye as something that broke me. I see it as something that woke me up. It showed me the importance of emotional safety, the importance of self-respect, the importance of choosing peace even when your heart feels heavy. And most importantly, it showed me that my life didn't end when that chapter closed. It began again, stronger, wiser, softer in the right ways. So if you're standing in a moment right now where a goodbye feels unbearable, where letting go feels like losing everything, pause for a moment, breathe, and consider this gently. Maybe this ending is not here to destroy you. Maybe it's here to save a version of you that deserves peace. You won't understand it immediately. You might not understand it for a while. But one day, when your heart feels lighter, when your mind feels calmer, when your life feels more aligned, you will look back at that painful goodbye with different eyes, and you will realize that what once felt like loss was actually protection. Some goodbyes don't take your happiness away, they lead you back to it. And one day, quietly, unexpectedly, you will be grateful for the goodbye that saved your life.